just to go through what we've approved over the last 3 or 4 years to see how this would break out, how it would compare to what we've seen come through the door. For new development, we would still have the same requirement, full compliance. They say they need to comply with that ordinance. Whatever comes in there needs to meet the ordinance. Where it changes is we go from $75,000 as being the threshold to a percentage standard. So on additions and expansions, these are people that are coming in and building new square footage or expanding a parking lot, for example. In that case, we do have kind of a tier. We say for expansions between 15 and 19%, we want you to get your park strip in compliance. That's one of our big offenders for water waste, is to try to get those, the watering turf that's really not functional turf. We want to try to get that out of the equation. So that would be the first threshold. Second threshold, if they get over 20%, they would have to bring that into full compliance. And that's 20% of the value of the building. So that's consistent with a lot of what we've seen throughout the state, as far as what the standards are for full compliance is right at that 20% area. For remodels, this is where it gets a little bit trickier because it's an interior remodel, but we want to make sure that we're trying to get compliance over time. So in that case, we still have that same standard, 50 to 19% is park strip compliance. That 20 to 50.9%, so not quite 51%, that's where you get a proportional compliance. So, and we would start with those areas that are along streets and other areas where you have that non-functional turf that's out there. So in that case, if they do 20% value of the building in new construction value that's equal to 20% of the value of the building, and between that and 50.9, they would make a 20% or a 41%, whatever is proportional to that standard or that improvement they're making. Anything over 51% would be full compliance, and that we talked about that a little bit before. That's consistent with some of the other federal ordinances, things that require that when you get to that 51%, the idea is that you're basically new at that point, right? You're more new than you are old. So in that case, that full compliance would be required. There's some notable exceptions. We have had a lot of people say, hey, I'm just making seismic upgrades, and I don't feel like I should have to bring my landscape into compliance to try to get my building so it won't fall down in an earthquake. We've said, yeah, we agree. So those seismic upgrades, re-roofing, photovoltaic system, solar. We had a project at Dick's that was just reshelving. They were putting new shelves in the store, and because of the size of that store, it brought it up to meet that threshold we had before. And we said, yeah, that's not what we're really looking at, is those kind of projects. So it's people that are reinvesting, doing a remodel of their building, adding rooms, intensifying the use. That's what we're trying to get. And if there's a fire code, someone has to go in and redo their, for example, put fire sprinklers in where, because of a change of use or something, that would also not reach that threshold. So those are the exceptions. That's all I have. I've got the text of the ordinance that we can talk through, but I want to just say briefly, the goals that we have on this ordinance was, first of all, make this proportional to the investment that the people were doing. That's what's important to us. The second one was to make sure that we are getting compliance. We do feel like this is an important standard. It's important enough that the state has emphasized it over the last few years. We've all seen the impacts of this in our yards. We've had water restrictions. We know that we need to make some pretty substantial changes in the state from what we've done in the past. We feel like this does rise to that kind of health kind of standard, because we do need to make sure we have enough water going forward in our state. So we do think it's important to get that compliance over time. We want to make sure that it does not disproportionately impact smaller businesses over larger. So we try to make that balance here, not disproportionately putting the impact on the small users. And then the last thing is, again, we think that it's better to have a percentage standard so that we don't have to revisit this every few years as inflation occurs. 75,000 we know is not the right number. We don't have to want to revisit that every few years as prices increase. So with that, this was reviewed by the Planning Commission twice. We made some suggestions to change it, to make it a little more proportional. They have been extremely supportive. They have a very high priority for making sure that we do get compliance over time. They want to be fair about it, but they also, for them, a big priority is that this is an important issue, and that we do want to have something that will get compliance over time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. You can go through the text if you like, but that's it in a nutshell.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
And maybe I just forgot or didn't quite figure it out. But this ordinance is specific to our buildings construction. Is this also being applied to like my house, none of
This
those
is,
things, right?
this is just, this would be commercial multifamily,
Okay,
no single family. Yeah, single family still has the same standards. And those standards are voluntary compliance.
I really like the proportionality for the reason also that you mentioned. You wouldn't want a business that just wants to add another wing, and it's a small business, and then they see the compliance full cost, and it becomes economically not feasible for them to grow their business, potentially make more money, just so they can be in full compliance with the landscape. I mean, I think landscape's super important priority, but it's not as important as making sure people have jobs. So I just really like the idea of the proportionality, because it can kind of hit two birds with one stone. We don't have to be all, I mean, just the construction over 75 full compliance, no if or ands, buts about it. That's a little difficult. So it looks more technical, but I think it's much more equitable.
Fair. So,
thank you for that. Sorry.
my quick question, so up to 15% for the additional expansion and the remodel, there's nothing.
Yeah, we toyed around with that. There are some cities that start at 10. It's that balance of when do we want to go through the effort of getting that on some of those small uses. That could be a really, really small piece of landscaping. So
then on the remodel, that second bullet point, number 2, there, construction value, if you're between 20 and 15.9%, the proportional compliance is, how do you come up with that value of what are you matching at that point of what you're spending on the remodel? This way you have to spend on the landscaping?
That's a great, yeah. So no, it's proportional to the percentage of landscaping that has to be done. So it's not a value for value. It's if you do a 25% construction value, then you have to do 25% of your landscaping, but not value for value. And we may want to look into clarifying that language. But yeah, we're not saying you spent $100,000, you have to spend.
But then at that point, we'll start with the park strip.
Right. Park strip's always going to be.
It's always going to be.
That's
Yeah,
always gonna be
15 to 19 is
priority.
first priority, yeah, because that is one of our biggest, I get more calls on those big commercial park strips than anything else.
So the park strip and-
Yeah,
And whatever you are.
and whatever it is above that value, yeah.
If someone built a building 5 years ago at a project, and out of the goodness of their heart, they did the park strip then, and now they make an improvement, are they just conforming now? Or would we ask them to do?
For that first 15 to
equivalent?
19, yeah. that'd be-
Right.
Yeah. If they got over that 20%, they still have
yeah.
to make it proportional.
Then we're not gonna ask them to do beyond what the park strip is,
If they stay under that value, yeah.
in that first value.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, if they get above the value, then they got to be proportional to that, yeah.
And then another question, I know we've got in our code, there's a line about ag accessory buildings in the landscape code. I didn't know if that was an exemption.
It
So
still is, yeah.
What I'm wondering is if someone puts in a greenhouse, which is kind of with no utilities, it's kind of a temporary building, doesn't have power, doesn't have water to it. Is that going to put them beyond, sorry,
I'm
the
trying to
first
find that
break,
text.
the
yeah.
first break was,
I thought it wasn't include the text in the slide, but there is an exemption for ag. There wouldn't be an exemption for a commercial greenhouse, though, if it was.
that goes to Tina's question is where this lies. It wouldn't be if someone put a greenhouse in, a temporary greenhouse, but it's not in an agriculture zone, say it's in one of these zones that falls under this.
Are you talking about like Cal Ranch or someone's putting it's like a summer greenhouse, or? I'm trying to picture what that temporary
Well,
would be.
Tell me what kind of housing zoning this would fit under.
It's just your multifamily and
So
commercial.
just townhomes and.
It depends on the type of townhomes even. It's your apartments and your commercial development.
A duplex could be,
Now duplex would fall under single family standards.
so it's probably not an issue, so.
Okay, any other questions? Just real quickly, we have we had advertised about an opening on the planning commission. We have 2 openings. Going through collecting applications, so those interviews will take place on
Thursday.
February 23rd.
I noticed Jesse wasn't on the absent or
there? Is Jesse Barosio not on the planning commission? I thought we.
He's in the
right.
He's in the ramp.
On the road commission.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Who were the interviewing?
Four or five of them. Yeah, there's four. Interestingly enough, one of them named Brett Nielsen, which we thought was pretty funny. 'Cause
Yeah.
Brett Nielsen, different guy.
Two. Stephanie Weiss.
But I know last time you guys said, hey, we didn't even know you guys were doing that, so I wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
We're looking to fill 2 spots.
Yeah.
Kevin Scott Hill.
I think so.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Is that a motion?
Thank you. I can't make a motion, but okay. I think we're good. Are you okay, Kim? All right. No, I can't. Looking at it.
Sure.
I am going to turn the time over to Councilmember Bettina Smith Edmondson.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, I've invited a few guests, not really guests because they are residents of our city, but guests to our meeting to help us with the pledge and the prayer. So first, I will invite Bernadette Kemp to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Bernadette is a lifelong member or resident of Layton. She went to Verlin Park Elementary School. That's located where this building is currently sitting. 5 of her brothers were service members as well as her father, and she is a 35-year retiree from the base. So she will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and right after her, I will invite Pastor Fernando Calaguas. He is also a resident of Layton, and he is the pastor of Nations for Christ Church in Clearfield, Utah. So I'll ask you to please stand as Ms. Kemp will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Father God in heaven, we thank you. At least personally, Lord, I feel privileged to pray for this city where I live, Lord, and I am so pleased, Lord, to know that they honor prayer, and most especially, Lord, that they honor you. Lord, as you have promised from your word, when we commit our actions to you, you're going to make our plans succeed. Lord, I pray for our mayor. Lord, I pray also for our council and the rest of us here, Lord. I pray for your supernatural wisdom. I pray for your abundance, Lord God, because I know, Lord, every good and perfect gift comes from you. Lord, give them, Lord, the discernment, Lord God, the power that comes from you to be able, Lord God, to decide what is best for the city. Lord, I know as they serve the city, they serve you. And because they serve you, Lord God, you're going to bless them. Again, thank you for these wonderful people that are here today. Truly, may your name be glorified and be praised, Lord God, as they do all the decisions that they will make today. Lord, we honor you and we thank you, Lord. This we ask in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you both very much. I just have to ask a quick question. Relation to our
I don't know.
Kemp, Marcus
Are you
Kemp?
related to Marcus Kemp?
No, that's a married name. My maiden name is Spinks.
Okay, well, cool. All right, well,
So you're related to Eddie?
Ed, we just lost him last year in
Yeah.
June.
Yeah.
There's only 2 of us left, me and my brother Arthur Joseph.
well, thank you again, and thank you for your service. I appreciate that. Okay, tonight's meeting is actually I would hope to be fairly short, but I don't want to cut us short. And I would ask if anybody has any municipal announcements that you feel free to go ahead and give them at this time.
I'll just continue to announce that the Davis Arts Council across the parking lot, first and third Fridays, they participate in their small box theater here during the winter. These concerts are free to the public, and they are doing 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Fridays. So tomorrow you can check out their concert. And that's all I have tonight.
Oh, that is short.
Family recreation put on by the Parks and Recreation Department. It's a little over a month away, but it's one of the bigger events of the year for recreation. Friday night at the library will be March 24th, 6:30 to 8 p.m. The theme is Dragons. Just a great opportunity to bring the whole family. There'll be storytelling, different parts of the library, different activities. So a great night out with the family.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we don't have any minutes tonight. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Mr. Thomas?
You okay?
Councilman Thomas?
Yeah, I was just looking at you.
Well, typically it's just these two.
The American Legion had their speech contest on the
Oratorical.
Constitution. What a great thing to see young people being able to speak on the Constitution. And then Layton Elementary had a, I don't know what you call it, it's called handshake something.
The Great Shake.
What's that?
The Great Shake.
The Great Shake. And all the kids come into this room, into the gym, one grade at a time. And there's like 30 or 40 people there. And they come up and they shake your hand. They go to 3 people. And then they ask you all kinds of questions. And I think it's a opportunity for the kids to kind of interact with older people. And
The
I know
developmental
the one
process.
kid, most of the questions are, what's your favorite color and whatever. But he asked me, he says, well, how old are you? I said, 70. And he went, really? Yeah, really. So it was fun. It's a good time. Went through every kid at school, and that. And neat to see that things are happening besides normal things at school. Yeah.
Well, thank
Fun
you.
time.
Thank you for doing that. Is that good?
Oh,
Anybody else?
sorry.
Okay. I guess I am kind of excited to get to the next item on the agenda. However, I did fail to see that there is one set of minutes that we need to approve. So, council, does anybody have any corrections to our Layton City Council meeting from January 19th of 2023? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as written.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes for the Layton City Council meeting, January 19th, 2023.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we can get to some fun and exciting part of our meeting, which is verbal presentations. And tonight we do have a special guest that we would like to honor. And actually, I'm going to have Miss Michelle Howard come up, and she's going to make a special presentation tonight.
Get that situated. All right, Mayor and Council, thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. It's my pleasure to be able to make this presentation to you. I am going to ask Mr. Dennis Howland to come up here and join me. Dennis, can you come up here?
Nice shirt.
Jeez. Thank you, Dennis. All right, each year, Layton City Parks and Recreation Department coordinates with many different groups and individuals who serve as volunteers in a variety of capacities within our department. From youth coaches, citizen committee members, specialized service projects, special events, and many more, these volunteers are essential to our operations and are greatly appreciated. Each year, the Parks and Rec Department gives special recognition to one of these individuals or organizations for their outstanding volunteer service. And it's my pleasure to be able to honor Mr. Dennis Howland as the 2022 Layton City Parks and Recreation Department Volunteer of the Year. I'm going to read some information about Mr. Howland. It probably doesn't do him justice, but I am going to try. And then our department director, David Price, will come up and read the formal proclamation. Mr. Howland has volunteered with the Parks and Recreation Department since 2017. He has worked closely with Layton City and the Parks and Recreation Department to see a lifelong promise fulfilled in the form of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall replica, which now stands in Layton Common Park. Mr. Howland, since that time, continues to work to further develop the area around the replica wall with other monuments such as the Vietnam Memory Plaque and Battle Cross Monument, and the future Freedoms Memorial Plaza that's also planned for the area. Mr. Howland has been a dedicated advocate and volunteer for Layton City and the Parks and Rec Department. He was instrumental in bringing him and his organization brought the Veterans Parade to Layton City. And he's instrumental in helping us every year with our City Veterans Honors Program, always being willing to serve as our MC or speaker or whatever other capacity we ask him to do. He is truly a dedicated individual with a heart of gold, and myself, our department, and the city just wants to thank Mr. Howland for his hard work he has given to the local community, veterans organizations, and our Parks and Rec department. So David's going to come up and read your proclamation. Dennis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to present you with this plaque.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
So Dennis, on behalf of the mayor and the council, I'd like to read the proclamation that the mayor will present. Whereas the Volunteer of the Year Award is presented annually by the Layton City Parks and Recreation Department, and whereas the Volunteer of the Year Award is presented to a deserving individual or organization who has demonstrated an exceptional level of volunteer service to Layton City, and whereas this year's recipient, Mr. Dennis Howland, has served as a Layton City Parks and Recreation Department liaison with the Vietnam Veterans of America for over 5 years, and whereas Mr. Howland has demonstrated an exceptional level of volunteerism to the Vietnam Veterans Utah chapter in the capacity of president serving the Layton area, and whereas Mr. Howland has demonstrated an exceptional level of volunteerism to the Vietnam Veterans of Utah in the capacity of National Director at Large serving the state of Utah, and whereas Mr. Howland has demonstrated an exceptional level of volunteerism to Layton City, now therefore Layton City proclaims in recognition of Dennis Howland as the Layton City Parks and Recreation Department 2022 recipient of the Volunteer of the Year Award for outstanding service to the community.
So, Mr. Helen, typically I'd come down there and hand this to you, but every one of us want to shake your hand. So that's why the proclamation is remaining up here until you come shake our hands and allow us to show our own appreciation to you and what you've done for this city.
Yeah, the other thing is, Dennis, if every Marine had your tenacity, hell, I could sleep easy every night. You're a little bulldog.
But with the Marines, Councilman, you only need one.
Okay. All the yellow shirts are going to be there. Alcohol. Be behind Dennis. Saw a lot more here.
It's gonna be a surprise when he opens up that phone.
I have to say something, and Michelle, I will keep this short. A few years ago, I was blessed a couple times. Once, the first time when I came to this city and saw then Mayor Stevenson, some of the council members, Joy, this incredible staff you have at Parks and Recreation, and asked if we could bring a replica of the Vietnam Memorial to this city. And we did it. We did it. The second was this group of guys who remembered to wear their yellow shirt. I'm speaking at another organization, veterans organization. I didn't feel proper to wear a different veterans organization shirt. But this comes as an incredible partnership between this city, this Parks and Recreation, but Dave Price has the greatest people that anybody could ever be in a Parks and Rec, and this organization of Vietnam Veterans of America and the associates. There are supporters that are not Vietnam veterans. Without them, this couldn't be. Without you, it couldn't be. When I'm in Silver Springs, Maryland every 3 months, I brag about our partnership with the city. And I have 48 other state council presidents asking me, how do you do it? I said, we sit down and talk. We support each other. But Layton City gets it. They understand us. They get us. And so, to this group of my brothers, thank you. And to you, there's no city better than Layton City, Utah. Thank you.
Dennis, I got to say, this is such an honor for us to be able to recognize you and your team. You've certainly put Layton on the map for us, and I know the council member here would probably want to take just a brief moment here and also share their appreciation to what this organization has done for us. And I'm just going to quickly speak on behalf of the Yellow Shirts. In regards to the association, anyone who's listening or wants to be a part of that association and show your support to these guys, that's what it's about. I mean, there is a veterans association that's going to support, and hopefully we can attract younger people to come in and help learn and grow from these guys that are here so that we can continue on what these gentlemen have started here in our city, especially when it comes to the education process. So I would highly encourage anyone to join this organization. Okay, Council, you're welcome to say what you want.
Just when we're done speaking, if you want to get, because I know you got to go to Lehigh back to a conference or whatever you call it, and that. So don't feel obligated. We'll obligate you some other time.
So thinking about my time prior to the council, when I'd come to city events like Layton Fest or the Veterans Day presentations, I would always see different faces, but I didn't have names to them. And you tend to see the same faces at different events. And Dennis was one of those that I would see and recognize his face, but got to learn his name this year, and I appreciate that. Appreciate all you do for our community, Dennis.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I've mentioned this before to Dennis that my dad and my uncle both served in Vietnam. And so I have a special place in my heart for Vietnam veterans, and the fact that we have this replica, this wall here in our city. We have the base right next door, military brat. It's a special feeling. I hope as that park continues to develop, that spirit gets even stronger in this area of our park. And so I just thank you for the vision. Thank you for making it happen. And thank you over here for the staff and the councils in the past who've made these decisions to have this here. It's a draw. It's a memorial, but it's also a draw. And we're teaching new generations what has happened and what happened and how it has affected families and the freedoms that have been protected because of what you did. And I'm glad that you're getting your due. Not that you asked for it, but I'm proud that our city has stepped up in this way to honor this group of individuals who gave all the names on that wall and your lives and all that you've done. You've shared yourself with this country and through your service. So thank you for your service. Thank you, Dennis, for all that you're doing, have done. And again, just appreciate the fact that we have this in our city. It's a blessing for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I echo everything that's been said so far, Dennis, but the Vietnam generation is often forgotten. And unfortunately, that's the way it is in a lot of the areas of the country. But you're not forgotten here in Layton, but that's because you, Dennis, because you had an idea and you wanted to make sure that this was a place and you had these discussions, because my guess is that councils in the past probably wouldn't have had that as an idea to do on their own. But that's something you're going to be able to pass on to future generations. And I was, my 5-year-old son and I were driving by the monument a couple weeks ago after we had spoken down at the Capitol about trying to get some additional funding to make the funding or the plaza a little bit bigger. And I had a chance to have a conversation with my 5-year-old about, see all those names on that wall. Those are each individual people, and we had a chance to me to learn and to teach him that. And so thank you for allowing me to have a place right here in my city to be able to teach my son about something so that he won't forget what some other people previously have. So thank you for all you do. And the last thing is that you could have taken that as a victory lap because it's a deserved one, but you didn't stop. Your Veterans Day parade, you're out, you're now the volunteer of the year for the Parks and the Rec. I mean, you're just accomplishing so much, and we just are so grateful to have you. Layton is so grateful to have you, Dennis, so thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you, gentlemen, for your continued support, and I do know it is a team effort there, so we just appreciate everything you've done for us. Mr. Hallen.
This is the 50th anniversary of the end of our war. 50 years since the last of our troops came home. On the 25th of March at the wall, we'd like to invite you all out. We're going to do an observance of that day. We're going to honor Gold Star families, surviving spouses, even spouses that lost their Vietnam vet after they came home due to the effects of that war. And on the 29th, we'll be at the state capitol with Governor Cox. I would just love to see all of you out there. Because they'll be there. You can bet.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I know they will. Okay, well, thank you very much. And as Mr. Thomas said, I mean, you don't feel like you an obligation to stay because we know you're on the road a lot and you guys have other commitments. Okay, well, now you can see why I was excited to kind of get to that point of the meeting, because it's not often we get to honor such a great group of guys, but in particular, Mr. Hallen for all of his efforts here in the city. We'll now turn the time over to our citizens. This is our citizens' comment period. So if there's anyone in the audience that wish to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda later, then you're more than welcome to. You're welcome to stand up to either side of the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Merrill Ballantyne. We have agricultural land at 1252 North, Fort Lane. And my wife, Nicole, is here. We are here to advocate for agricultural operations within the city. We have a small farm that we run, and we both have day jobs, so it's not our full-time thing. But we feel it's very important for agriculture to be within the city, and there are provisions in city code that protect agricultural operations that are currently in the code that that allow for that to happen. And we feel strongly that it's really important to grow food locally. There are things happening in the world that threaten food security, and there's no guarantee that the grocery stores are going to be filled with food. So we've thought about maybe doing some presentations on how cool agriculture is and what can be done on small pieces of land, and why it's important, things like that. So we don't have anything prepared today, but we are interested in getting to know you and possibly looking at changes to the code that could benefit and incentivize people to grow food locally, have livestock, and that kind of thing within the city. So that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? Okay, seeing that there's none, we'll go ahead and move on then to item number 6, since we do not have any consent items tonight. So that brings us to our public hearing portion of the meeting. And what we'll do is we'll actually have the item A presented by Morgan Floward, who will speak about our the community development block grant. And it's a plan that we put together annually. So, Morgan?
Evening, Mayor and Council. So just very briefly, the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program. This is a program administered from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And Layton City has been designated as a community that's an entitlement community that is authorized to administer funds from HUD, these federal dollars. Every 5 years, as a entitlement community, we are required to develop a 5-year consolidated plan, and it's this time that we need to do that, and so that's why we're making the brief presentation to the City Council tonight. There's 2 public hearings that are required for the CDBG consolidated plan, and tonight's our first one, and the second one is tentatively slated for May, where the plan that will be put together will be presented to the City Council and hopefully adopted. So basically, the intent for tonight is to let the public and our subrecipients, our partners such as Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Lantern House, and others, some of them have come tonight just to let you know what they're doing, what's happening with the support they're receiving from the city, and just let the public comment on what's happened in the past and what they'd like to see happen. So if you don't have any questions for me, we'll go ahead and let them make their comments if that seems appropriate. Okay, thank you.
Okay, before I can take comments, so we're going to have to open up wait, excuse me. I misunderstand what you just asked me. We need to open up our public comment, our public meeting. So, Council, I need a motion to open the public hearing.
Let's make a motion that we have a public hearing now.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, you're more than welcome to speak. Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Deneen Adams. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at Open Doors. Just want to thank you for your support. Let you know that with your support, our food bank was able to disperse over 1 million pounds of food. We provided 65 nights of shelter for people we just found on the street by putting them in motels. It's kind of a problem here in Davis County. We don't have a shelter, except the domestic violence shelter, which is great. But when we find people out on the street and they haven't been involved with domestic violence, we have to either send them to Ogden, Salt Lake, or we put them up in a hotel and a motel. When COVID hit, the best solution was to put them up in a motel, and we had made arrangements with Sharon Inn, and they gave us a really good discount, and they took the families, and it was great because it's more of a motel, so they didn't have to go through a lobby. So like I said, 65 nights of shelter. We also, too, for our nursery, we provided 545 people with nursery services. Again, this year, we're seeing Open Doors. We were in charge of the emergency rental assistance. We provided 1,700 individuals with rental assistance. 22% of those were from Layton City. This has ended. On February 5th, it closed. We have been inundated with phone calls. Already, Heather Estates has evicted 11 people. Last year, their total evictions for the whole year were 3. For the month of January, they were 11. We're very, very scared about what's to come, to say the least. Our agency has received a contract with the state till the end of December to help families that are in a situation where they need assistance with rent, but we have no rental assistance. We have the people there to help them, but no rental assistance. So we're looking towards Layton City to help us with that this year. Also, too, another big part of what we're trying to do is to help people overcome poverty. You know, you can give people as much food, as much assistance with rent as you can, but if you don't do anything to help them solve the problem of poverty, we're just going to keep seeing this. We have our program Circles that actually provides low-income families with mentors to help them overcome the barriers of poverty. Our program has been immensely successful. As a matter of fact, we're doing really well with our Youth Circles program. They just did a fashion show at Layton City Mall, and it was all about against bullying. So it was very inspiring. It wasn't your typical fashion show. It was how to be your best, feel good about yourself. They did such a good job, they keep asking them to come back, and they're really involved with it. But again, thank you so much for your support. We did have the point in time count a couple of weeks ago, and the year before, we found 23 people. This year, we found 39. That's 1 year. It's scary. There's a lot going on out there with homelessness. There's no solutions, and not to be rude to Salt Lake, but we do not want to end up like a Salt Lake. So thank you for your support. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So your Circles program is great, and you said you just mentioned the fashion show, but I think we have a group of players here that
Together we
form
ball.
a team to play b-ball again.
Yeah. Are you guys ready to do that? We're all up for that again. We do that every year. That's probably, you were there, Mayor Petro. I mean, it's fun.
There was a lot of us, and now, I know that we'd like to
yeah,
challenge them again.
definitely. We, right now with Circles, things are kind of tense because a lot of families are feeling a lot of stress, but we do family activity nights every other month, and Together We Ball is one of them. So definitely, we'll get on that and do that again. That was a lot of fun. I loved watching you play basketball too.
He was just
Yeah,
he's
but
our shining star.
Well, I was going to say, he was the one that made all the baskets.
we now have.
I just look like
Bettina,
one of the kids.
so we
that's
don't
why.
have to. Yeah. Oh, he's not a point guard. He's a ball hog.
Yeah.
Mainly because he's the only one that can dribble.
But you guys have no idea how great that is for those families to see, because it's so funny. They have no idea about getting involved with their community. And then when they get out there to these events and they see all of you and that you care, and it really makes them get involved with the community. And I think that's the best thing when you have all the barriers of poverty, but you see somebody that cares about you. It makes you want to be better and get involved. So, thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. I'm Carlene Kidman, and I am the director of the Layton Youth Court. And I want to just thank you guys for your support and hope you will continue to support us. We're in our 25th year, and that's phenomenal right now. We're one of the youth courts that in the whole state that stayed the longest and is running continuously, and we're still going strong. 25 years ago, when we started youth court, our cases, 51% of our cases were truancy. Right now, our 34% of our cases are marijuana. And the next highest case is e-cigarettes with tobacco at 14%. So youth have changed over the years. They have a lot of problems. Just this last year, I bet, I'm trying to think, about 5 or 6 of the offenders that were coming to youth court had to cancel because they were in the hospital for either mental problems, because a lot of them have threatened suicide. So youth court is here to help these youth try to get through their problems, teach them better skills. We have a choices class that goes for 8 weeks, and we wrote it ourselves pretty much, and the kids give it to the other offenders, and they come out of it learning how to make better choices and what e-cigarettes really do to you and what marijuana really is, because kids have a lot of false information. So I could tell you a lot of statistics, but the biggest statistic this year, I think, is that last year, for the first time, we had 100% of all the youth who came through youth court completed their program. And that's phenomenal. I don't know if I'm the president of the Utah Youth Court Association, and I've been going through all the statistics from all the other courts in the state. There's 26 youth courts in the state, and none of them have hit 100%. So I feel like, yay, we did a great job. So I just want to thank you and ask for your continued support to keep this program going. Do you have any questions?
Council?
I don't have a question, but just wanted to express thanks to you, Carlene, for all of your work that you've done to help this program last as long, and 100% completion is amazing in any realm, especially in this type of a realm. And I also wanted to acknowledge Willa Kemp, who is out here. She's the daughter of Bernadette. She was one of your youth court participants back in high school.
Yes, she was. Cool. Okay. Anything else?
No, just to echo Councilmember Smith Edmondson, just that thank you for all you do. I mean, just the fact that the power that you give these kids to potentially have these discussions with each other and then try to help their behavioral processes in that scenario, I just think it's just the right way to do it when they're at these lesser offenses, and it hopefully will preclude them from going down a wrong path. And I think that if it's their kid, if it's their fellow, students doing it, it's just a different thing. It's just a different way of going about a problem. And just 25 years, however many lives that you've affected by doing that. So thank you. The city is very grateful to have you.
Thank you. One more thing. I keep track of the youth who are who become the judges who are members. 8% of those were actually offenders and have changed their lives around to become the judges and clerks and bailiff to help other youth so that they will make better choices. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to bring it up and say, hey, you need to know how you have impacted those kids as well by giving them that encouragement to go on and to really be a contributing member of society. And thank you, Carlene. I know you've been through a lot, and we support you. We really do.
You don't.
So thanks.
There's 92% that have worked and done something positive with their lives. And that, as much as they've helped others, in essence, I believe they've helped themselves. And I think that's beyond, again, like Bettina, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
Mayor and council people. I am Kristen Floyd. I am the current and outgoing executive director for Safe Harbor. We have selected a fabulous replacement for me, so I wanted to give that update first and foremost. Some of you know him, Kurt Bateman, who was an ED with the Davis Arts Council, will be replacing me next week, and so I'm excited to announce that replacement. But most of all, I want to express my appreciation to Layton City for their continued support for Safe Harbor. most of you have been to our newest community advocacy building that is located across from the Layton Hospital. That building alone has been instrumental in the way that we have been able to serve Davis County. To give you some statistics on the impact of that building and of the services that we are providing in Davis County. A year ago, we went from caseloads of about 20 to 25 per advocate, and I only have 8 advocates, to a caseload of 60 per person this year. And that is just for individuals that are not being served directly in our shelter or our transitional housing apartments that are on our Kaysville campus. We had nearly 3,000 shelter nights this past year and over 50,000 services collectively as an organization that we have provided. We've also experienced a steep reduction in federal funding with our VOCA funding. We are looking at a 30 to 40% decrease in funding this upcoming fiscal year. So the funding that we receive from cities like Layton is imperative for us to be able to provide services to Davis County, specifically to the Layton residents, especially as we are experiencing such an uptake in the need for domestic violence services. We are unique. For some of you that don't know, we are very unique in Davis County in that we are the trifecta of services, and there is no other agency in the state of Utah that provides a comprehensive services that the way that we do. We have our domestic violence crisis shelter. We have a transitional housing apartment complex for which we are breaking ground on April 1st for a second transitional housing apartment building to serve individuals that need housing that have been affected by domestic violence or sexual assault. We have our community advocacy program for those that don't need those particular services but still need protective orders and other types of advocacy services. We offer children's services. We offer sexual assault examinations with our own nurses that provide those examinations at the hospitals throughout Davis County. We also have our own private room at the Layton Intermountain Hospital that allows us to facilitate those exams outside of the emergency room, for which that is not where you want to facilitate a sexual assault examination. We also have a prevention program and mental health services. All of those services are free to any of the Davis County residents, and I once again feel like it's imperative that we are providing those services here to Davis County. So thank you to the city for supporting us, for not just the funding, but attending our events and spreading the word and just being a good partner for Safe Harbor. So thank you for that. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I got to tell you, Kristen, I've worked with you over the years I've been here, and this is a sad time for us because
Please don't make me cry, Mayor.
You've worked and how you've changed this community, and knowing where you've propelled us to. I mean, the work couldn't have been done without your tenacity and hard work that you've done, similar to like Mr. Hallen here tonight. And, I'm happy to hear you have your replacement. Yes, many of us know him, and that we wish him just as much luck. But tonight, the focus is really on you and saying thank you. We appreciate it. And certainly when you look at all the programs you guys offer, I'm impressed. And I can tell you firsthand that I have sent several people your way, and they have spoke highly of the amount of service they've received and the fact that they know that you keep everything top secret. That meant a lot to them, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else?
Well, Kristen.
Bettina.
Kristen and I go way back to Department of Workforce Services years. So we were coworkers in the past. As the mayor is saying, I'm just going to echo that, we're sad to see you go, but very grateful for the services that you have helped to provide. You didn't necessarily mention this in your presentation, but the majority of the people who receive services at your facility, at least the one here in Layton, are Layton residents. And so while this is a Davis County, service, that this service is really reaching home here. And so we're super grateful for your willingness and ability to not make this a hush-hush topic, and to advocate for the services that are provided, and to encourage us as well to share that with people and to not hide it and to say, hey, this happens and we have services that can help you. And so I just thank you for, as the mayor said, taking that charge and helping us to be able to share that. It's unfortunate that this happens, but it's a reality. And so we're grateful that the services are here and that you've helped to propel it to where it is. So congratulations on your next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you've done. It's definitely not a topic that people like to talk about, and the fact that you work in this industry full time, it says a lot about you. So thank you, because we need advocates like you and your organization. You alluded to this in some of your comments, but I remember, I think it was either last time or the time before, there was some discussion about how COVID had exacerbated some of the numbers, especially domestic violence. Have those numbers increased, or are they where they were before, or are they pretty much just the post-pandemic is the new reality?
Yeah, the post-pandemic is our new reality. We have not experienced a decrease at all. We have hit somewhat of a plateau, but it varies. 1 month we had, double our services, and the next month we were back down to what we considered regular, right? And so it just really differs. This weekend we are preparing for a substantial increase in services with the NBA Finals here. We have some extreme concerns around sex trafficking and some other situations that we will experience. And Davis County and our organization specifically is on call to serve clients that are coming in that will be affected statewide by some of those situations that are coming to the state this weekend. Thank you.
Can I just add one aside to that? I know the mayor had a PSA moment earlier, but with Kristen bringing up that human trafficking is so very real. It is All-Star Weekend, and the police forces, I know, at least on the south end, and maybe some of ours, I don't know, are ramping up. And so, I just admonish everyone who's attending, your young people who want to be starstruck and all of those things, just to be very vigilant and enjoy the moments, but be very vigilant, because human trafficking is not, it's not something that's gone away. And so just be aware of your surroundings and watch out for your young people.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bettina. On my way here, I was on the phone with my 23-year-old daughter and said, under no circumstances do you take an invitation to a party anywhere this weekend unless it's somebody that you already know. And under no circumstances, if you're out at a club, do you take a drink by somebody, because the goal of some of these organizations that are coming to town this weekend are to recruit individuals into a sex trafficking ring. And so we are once again on high alert for that as well, and working very closely with all of the law enforcement agencies collectively as a state this weekend.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that added service and awareness, so people are aware of it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate your support.
Thanks. Okay.
Hi, my name is Susie Larson. Do you want my address? I just live in Layton.
Our recorder needs it.
1052 East, 3250 North. I first want to say how humbled I am. I mean, there's some amazing people out here coming forward with some valid reasons to need money. I own Susie's Senior Companionship Services, and I've been in business. This is my 12th year. I started out as for-profit, and then the year 2019, I went for nonprofit. I service seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. It used to be people over the age of 62, but I have found with some of the organizations that I've collaborated with that I go as young as 18. I haven't gone into children just because my staff doesn't want to deal with the children, so we go as young as 18. I don't say no to anybody. And that's the reason why I went nonprofit. There's many people who fall in that gap where they're too rich for the poor and too poor for the rich. And that was my goal going nonprofit, is to make sure that everyone gets taken care of. There is a serious need in our community for safe and reliable transportation. I have picked up two IHCs and one Kaysville clinic who need help with transportation because they were using Ubers and Lyfts, but their reliability was terrible. Plus, what I'm really going after is a wheelchair van. And those brand new are close to $100,000. I can pick them up used for about 45. I'm in the process of getting my second one right now because trying to get grant money is easier said than done. But the need is there, and so I'm going ahead and purchasing one. So it'll be my second one. I've got one that's a side entry, which works, but when I get larger people, they don't fit in the side as easy. So I'm going for a rear entry with 2 wheelchairs because I can get bigger people in from the rear. And so I'm coming today with hopes to share some of the funds with some of these amazing groups that you will consider that with this next cycle. So, anybody
Thank you.
have any questions?
Yeah.
What we have in front of us is current, right, from last year, right? So maybe can you give us a little idea? I mean, we know some of the other organizations. Can you tell us what other things you provide as a service?
Absolutely. We do a lot of in-home services. So we do homemaking, meal prep, transportation, respite care, personal care. With the state of Utah, I have a personal care license, so that allows me to help with brief changes in showering. I'm not a home health agency, and after what happened with COVID-19, I don't want to go down that way. The government's hands were really tied those companies down, where for me, my company doubled in size and has just increased tremendously. I've got a staff of almost 100. I service from North Salt Lake to Idaho to Wyoming to Nevada is my region. So, so we're big, and we just try to help whoever we can. And the nice thing about getting a wheelchair with 2 vans is my hope is we can transfer more people than just one at a time.
Where's your home base office at?
In Layton.
Okay. Whereabouts?
I do it out of my home to keep my overhead down because my greatest asset are my employees. And I'm sure with these people, they know that they couldn't do this amazing work without amazing people. And that's where my money goes, is to payroll.
Okay. Well, I'm impressed, and I do know several people that actually need this service, but I had no idea you existed. So
Yeah, I collaborate. Good. I'm with Davis County, Weber County, and Bragg with the senior division. I work very closely with Ann Workman over at the senior transportation in Clearfield. And then I've collaborated with some home health agencies and hospice because they don't have the staff, and I do. And then I've collaborated with like McCady Hospital, because there's a lot of clients. The problem where we live is counties will not cross county lines. And we have individuals that need to go to the VA or University of Utah Cancer. I'm grateful that they've incorporated that down in Farmington. But there's a lot of them that love to go up to McCady and Ogden Regional. And the services won't cross lines. And so that's where we hope to fill in the gaps.
Okay. Well, thank you for filling that, or finding a need and filling it, is what I should say. Council, does anyone else have any questions? Okay.
This may be a question that I don't know if Zach's asking or not, and this is not to you, thank you for your presentation, but what would be the process for a business such as this that would want to apply for CDBG funds? Because as was mentioned, these are those that we are aware of already. What's on the list we've already provided for. So how would someone who has such a business be able to apply?
Yeah, so Susie or anyone else that's interested can contact me, and I can give them an application. We're currently receiving applications, and I'll definitely follow up with Susie after this. If we don't see a fit with what we're currently funding, which is mainly focused on housing type activities, I can certainly put Susie in touch with some other organizations that would be a little bit more in line with their mission and what their directives are with their grants and their funding that would be available for these types of activities.
Thank you. And what is the deadline for the CDBG applications?
March 15th.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mayor. Morgan, will you explain the formula for the money? Is it going to go up?
It mainly depends on how well we're doing as a community. You know, what's the employment rate? You know, how's our housing situation? That's a big one. How many people are homeless? How many students are receiving assistance for school lunch, for example? There's several things that HUD puts into that formula, but we typically average around the 400,000 mark. It fluctuates in that range.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Roberts?
Yeah, could you give us an example or maybe of something that has been funded under the historic downtown infrastructure?
Yeah. So the most recent one was at the time Layton Cycle, and we assisted with a facade project to spruce up the front of that business, and it's now Young Power Sports. But yeah, at the time that was our most recent. We've had a few others that have applied, but unfortunately, we weren't able to meet all the HUD requirements for the funding for that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Was there anybody else in the audience that needed to present on this particular item? Okay. All right. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll then move on to item number B, which Mr. Chad Wilkinson is going to present that item for us, which is a proposed amendment to the Layton City Municipal Code.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is an item that we've had some discussion on in previous work sessions and a great deal of discussion at the Planning Commission, but this is a modification to our, what we call landscape compliance, but this is the trigger for when compliance with our landscaping standards would be required. Just to briefly go through just some history, I've got the slide up there, but just to briefly go through some history of this particular amendment. We changed the code back in 2021 to change, really, it changed the entire idea behind what we do for landscaping. Rather than having minimum requirements for lawn and turf, for example, we now have maximum requirements. It was really a water conservation ordinance trying to get into water-wise landscaping. As part of that, there was already in our code a trigger for when someone would have to meet the landscaping standards of the code. At the time, it was $50,000 of construction costs would require a business to meet the code. That was bumped up at the time to $75,000, realizing that we have some change in the economy, so change in costs of materials and things that would facilitate or necessitate a need for a change in that cap. As we've begun to administer this ordinance the last 2 years, it has been very, very well received by our business owners. We've had very, very many of our businesses that have said, yeah, this is a great ordinance. We support it. We know that water conservation is essential in this state where we have an arid climate. But we have had a few of our businesses that have said, you know, this is really based on the amount of expansion that we are doing or want to do. The $75,000 doesn't go quite as far as it used to. That we're hitting that $75,000 cap on quite a few projects, and in some cases, the requirement for that landscaping and the cost of those landscape improvements would come very close to the value or the cost of the improvements that were being made. So in response to that, as in an effort to try to create a standard that would more equitably bring into compliance these standards for landscaping, we've developed, again, with a couple of different meetings with the Planning Commission, some standards that we feel like really do address that. So I'll go through those really briefly now. First of all, for new construction, we still have a requirement for full compliance with our landscape codes. So anything that comes in new, if there's a new building built in the city, a new use, for a good example would be if there was a new retail store that was built on a vacant lot, they would have to fully comply with our new water-wise landscape standards. That's the new standard, and the old standard stays the same. Where we have some changes, though, are those additions and expansions and remodels. As we've said, currently there's a cap or a threshold of $75,000 that if someone crosses that threshold, they have to bring their landscaping into full compliance. What we would propose is that instead of doing that with that $75,000 cap, we now make it proportional to the investment that the business is making in that remodel or that expansion and addition. We've bifurcated this a little bit because we realize that an addition and expansion has different impacts than a remodel. Additions and expansions are usually impacting the landscape areas. They're usually going out into existing landscaping or existing parking areas, or parking is being expanded to accommodate those expansions, which again impacts those landscape areas. So we did treat those a little bit differently, but the proposal, as shown on the screen, is to for an addition or expansion, if there's an expansion of 15 to 19.9, just under 20% of the building valuation for the property, that those folks would be required to bring the park strip area of their property into compliance with current code. Our current code for commercial and multifamily applications does require landscaping within the park strip, but it changes that landscaping from very water consumptive turf lawn areas to water-wise landscaping with drip systems and other ways that can conserve water. For an expansion over 20% of that building valuation, it would require full compliance with the landscape standards. And again, that's because once we get to an expansion of over 20% of the square footage, we're now impacting a pretty good size of a landscape area. And so again, we feel that that's proportional to the addition or expansion that's being proposed. We have compared that with other ordinances in the state and out of state and feel like that's consistent with what we've seen for a lot of cities and how they handle that particular type of expansion. So for remodels, it's a little bit different because typically these are talking about internal remodels. I want to be clear about that. So these would be internal remodels. It may also include someone that was doing a facade remodel, so changing just the exterior appearance but not changing the square footage of their building. Those are valued a little bit differently. In that case, the construction value between 15 and 19.9% still requires that park strip compliance, but anything between 20 and 50.9% would be proportionate to that increase in or the construction costs. So to explain this, and I wanted to make it's a very good clarification that was brought up in our work meeting, but it's not a dollar amount to dollar amount. The construction value, if someone comes in with a project that's equal to 25% of the building value with their construction, the amount of landscaping that would be required would be the square footage. So it would be a 20% treatment of that. 20% of the landscape area would be required to be brought into compliance. Anything over 51% would be required to fully comply. And again, the idea there is once you get to a 50% reinvestment in a property, you're really, it's almost like this is a new building in that case. And so at that point, that would be full compliance. There are some exemptions built into the code for things that are really just related to re-roofing, seismic upgrades, things that are trying to deal with structural issues, but that aren't really increasing the intensity or the use of the building. There was a good question that came up in work meeting. We do have some exemptions that are not shown on the screen that were already in place in our code for agricultural structures. So agricultural structures that are part of a bona fide agricultural use are already exempt in our code, and we would keep that exemption as part of this particular code. So with that, again, this has been looked at by the Planning Commission at a couple of different meetings. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend adoption of these changes to our landscape compliance standards. And we would also bring that same recommendation to you as the council. We would ask that you adopt Ordinance 2301, which establishes the appropriate application requirements for our landscaping standards. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Chad, thanks for this. Just one question. When we passed the initial landscaping ordinance, you just said 2 years ago. That's time flies.
Yeah.
We were really leading out as a city. Are we leading out with this formula for remodels and for new construction or additions?
You know, we found that cities are across the board in how they administer these landscape ordinances. What we found, particularly in our state right now, is that this is somewhat new. This is new ground. Layton was kind of ahead of the curve on some of these things. So we think that you're going to see additional cities relooking at this because a lot of those landscape compliance standards are still based on old codes that relate to not water-wise landscaping, not bringing things into drip systems. So we think we're going to see additional changes. Certainly there are already ordinances out there that do require a proportional or a percentage-based compliance standard. We did look outside of Utah to some of the states and areas that have been dealing with these issues for a long time. And there are states that are even, states and areas, I should say, that are more arid than even where we live here along the Wasatch Front. And they've been trying to figure this out for quite a while. And a lot of those do have these proportional compliance standards where it's based on a building value, it's based on the amount of reinvestment in a property, and that reinvestment amount is what the basis of the compliance standard is. And we think it's a good standard. We also, as I mentioned in the work meeting, we want to get away from a solid dollar amount, because then we have to come back every couple of years and say, well, costs have gone up, we have to change that dollar amount. We think a percentage standard is going to be easier for us to keep for a long, long time and respond to any changes in the market.
And you'd mentioned in the work meeting as well that the business community they've received this really well. I mean, as you've talked to them and discussed it with them.
Interestingly enough, yeah, even the ones that we've worked with that have been concerned about the threshold have all almost universally, I won't say universally, but almost universally have said this is the right thing to do. We just hope we can find a way that we can work with these businesses to incrementally comply with the ordinance over time, rather than having that full compliance based on just an arbitrary $75,000. So, but for the most part, yeah, vast majority have been very supportive, even to the point of saying it is going to cost me some money, but it's the right thing to do. So yeah, I've been very well received.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, to Councilman Morris's point in the work meeting, do you think there's any necessity to add any of the language regarding the dollar for dollar on the business valuation, or do you think
Wanted
that
to see if we had? It might be good to clarify. I wanted to see. Because we say in an amount, but it would probably be good to clarify. But the clear meaning of that was to require, and that's what we've seen in other areas, is that they require that proportionally. So in other words, it's a dollar amount to calculate what that percentage is, but the percentage of landscaping compliance is an area, a square footage requirement. So it's 20% or 25% of the value requires that 25% of the area be brought into code. So I think that would not be a bad thing. And if that's something that the council wants to make part of the motion, we feel that could be something we could just add, not necessarily bring it back to you, but we could just add that language to clarify that is what we're talking about.
So maybe just help from legal on how we make that motion. That you're comfortable
I
with
think,
us doing
and
that, or you think it's comfortable as it is now?
I'll let Darren chip in, but I think we could easily, just as part of the motion, say that we would clarify that to say that this is based on that's the dollar amount that then is based on a square footage amount for the expansion, and we'll work on the language smithing that.
And that is correct. You could add that in as your motion, whoever decides to make that motion.
And so you said motion for the dollar amount based on. Say that again. I'm going to write it down.
I think you could just make your motion that that this approval would be based on clarifying that the percentage of building value applies to a percentage of landscape area in terms of compliance, and we'll wordsmith that.
That's good. Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. I don't know if anyone in the audience wishes to speak on behalf of the ordinance. Okay, seeing that there's no one that wishes to come forward, I'll go ahead, council, then, and entertain a motion. And the way we're going to have to conduct this is item A is, we open both these up under our public hearing. Item A will continue, so if you could kind of mention that we'll close the public hearing only on item B. State your motion.
I'm the one that made the motion.
I was going to
longer,
say,
so
I can see right now, you made the notes, so I'm looking to you to go ahead and make this, but if you can make that, include that in your motion, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing on item B and pull up my phone here and move to approve. Let's see. Move to adopt ordinance 23-01 with language to clarify the percentage of the building value applies to the landscape area. As explained by staff.
That sounds good.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt ordinance 23-01. I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this. Councilmember Thomas.
Yay.
Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Aye.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloxham.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It passes unanimously. And that really kind of brings us down to any unfinished business. Council, does anyone have any? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close this city council meeting.
This early?
I move that we adjourn the council meeting.
I double it. I second it.
All right, thank you, everyone. We appreciate those that attended tonight, and certainly just know that this council will does pay attention to everything that you say, including the agricultural. So thank you.